Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
State of the Wolves Monday episode here. A reminder to the Flagrant Howls faithful that we are hooking you up with $15 Timberwolves tickets to select games in March. You can go to timberwolves.com/March and use the code SKOR exclamation point. That's score with an exclamation point to get your $15 Wolves tickets to select games in March. Max of 4 tickets per account. Tickets will be sent within 48 hours of the game date purchased. Offer valid while supplies last. Restrictions apply. Tickets not available for resale. That's we can just speed those disclaimers up like they do in the commercials.
You just speed yourself up a lot.
Before we get to the overview and the vibe check and all the other categories here too, MyBookie is making it a little more fun. This is a big month of basketball here in March. MyBookie is here.
Huge. And I'm sure that lots of you watched the first and second round, right? And your bracket got busted. And you're like, what am I going to do? Sports Dad, what should I do? No problem. Don't forget, single game matchups can be where the real cash is made. Bet every game, scope out player props, and find your edge. MyBookie's Bet and Get is back to sweeten the deal as well. Place a cash bet on March Madness. Get a surprise reward, free bets, cash back, bonus chips. You never know what's coming next. Sign up now with the promo code Flagrant Howls and claim your deposit bonus to make the most of March Madness. Obviously, Sweet 16 starts this coming weekend. Go to mybookie.website/Flagrant Howls. That's mybookie.website/Flagrant Howls. Bet on every game. Keep the fun going. As Phil said, it's a great time of year, and MyBookie makes it that much more fun for you.
All right, Dex has the overview here from the last week. Wolves and Pacers tonight. Anthony Edwards on the injury list with like a thumb
laceration.
Like a laceration.
Yeah.
Considered day-to-day. So we'll see what happens there. But Dex has the overview, and then we'll get into the categories here.
All right, here's your overview. The Wolves 41-31 on the season. Nearing the end here, the regular season, getting closer and closer to playoff time. They're 7th in the Western Conference. They're a half game out of the top 6 right now. They are 9th in offensive rating, 6th in defensive rating throughout the course of this season. And again, the playoff odds things. So we have another fluctuation. On ESPN, it went down about 11%. So they're now at 84% chance to be a playoff team, according to ESPN. We did this a week ago. It was 95. So they've now dropped a little bit. On Basketball Reference, it's a 93% chance. But for whatever reason, the Wolves' NBA Finals odds have gone up. The Wolves now have a 1.4% chance to win the Larry O'Brien Trophy, according to Basketball Reference, after it being like 0.5 last week. So I have no idea how the sausage is made for either of these sites, but their playoff odds are still pretty good. And if the playoffs started today, which I think I've had saved here the last 3 weeks, they would host the Clippers in a play-in scenario because they're still trying to get out of that play-in situation. So that's your state of the Wolves so far on the season. Wolves vibes. Judd, do you have a Wolves vibe check for us?
I sure do. Wolves vibes need a little bit of a tune-up, which started with the Pelicans blowout on Friday, but vibes are in need of focus. Need to stay focused, gentlemen. This team has been really throughout the course of the entire season up and down, and it appeared that with the 8-game win streak that came to an end last week with the back-to-back defeats at home, that they were in good shape. But now, you know what? You go through a little bit of a skid there, and now you come back. That's great. 10 games left, though. There is no margin for checking out error now. Like, this is the time to – I'm not saying you're not going to lose. That's not a realistic ask. I am saying that how you do lose matters, and that 2-game skid – against bad teams was a real focus problem. Chris Finch has, I think, torn out at least a bit of that gorgeous gray hair he's got going, and I don't blame him one bit, but they are in need of some focus, Phil Mackey.
Yeah, I have a wildly different vibe check, but to drill down on what you just said, yeah, they've had, when they are playing, this is kind of the maddening thing. When they are playing at or near their 90th percentile, like, all right, they're healthy, everything's clicking for the most part, they are legitimately one of the 5 best teams in the NBA. I think. I mean, Oklahoma City can stake a claim. The Cleveland Cavaliers, Boston, those teams. But once you get past those three teams, the best version of the Wolves beats Oklahoma City, even shorthanded often, has the Nuggets number, has other teams' number. But it's that other teams are able to tap into, whether it's focus, the word that you just used, other teams are able to tap into their best version more often than the Wolves. And the biggest question is, okay, once you get into the playoffs, should you be so fortunate to avoid the play-in or win in the first round of the play-in? Once you get to the playoffs, does that problem go away? Because now it's like, no longer is it the boring regular season where it's the Pelicans on a Wednesday after playing the depleted Pacers. It's like, no, this is do or die 7-game series against some of the best teams in the world, where Anthony Edwards has thrived over his young career. He focuses and locks it in almost to a point where you're like, can we get a little more of that in the regular season, the first half of some of these games, right? That is the biggest question. Any team that they would face, if they're playing at their best, you could make a case that they should be favored in a 7-game series. But it's not given that they will be playing at their 90th percentile consistently enough.
Right.
So I agree with the word focus. Like, they were dialed in for 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden it's like the Pacers injury report came out last Monday, or what day was that? Yeah, it was last Monday. And they were like, okay, thank God. It's a back-to-back. This is going to be an autopilot win. Let's just roll the basketball out. And, oh, God, we're down by 15 points in the first half to a depleted team. And the win against the Pelicans on Friday was a nice elixir, but you should have done that.
Right.
I'm okay with you losing like one of these 4 games. I thought it was going to be against a fully stocked Pacers team. But now, if you beat the Pacers tonight, I guess you're kind of back on serve to some extent. But can they stay dialed in is a great way to frame it.
And don't beat yourselves. Like if you get straight up, flat out beat, that's fine. But what concerns me too is go look at the post game quotes. The Pacers game, the Pelicans game on Wednesday. The quotes are always the same. Ant saying, "Well, we've let down. We've got to get it back." It's like, no, dude, there's 10 games left now. Okay, I don't want to hear you let down. Now, if you say, "Hey, you know what? Team X came out and kicked our ass," okay, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's like there's this lack of focus that sort of comes and goes. And I agree, Phil. I do think that in the playoffs, that would not be the case. But I'm not 100% positive now. I'm not positive, and that's a bad thing. This team needs to be professional.
Did you guys see the bracket that came out today? If the NBA playoffs were like March Madness, 1 through 16, both East and West. Did you guys see what this would look like?
This is great.
So the Wolves in this situation, it's just taking the 16 best teams in the NBA, so there's obviously a little bit of an odd number. But the Wolves will be the 12th seed facing the Knicks, who are the 5th seed in a 1 through 16 scenario.
12-5. Little upset.
I love this.
That'd be a blast. Who's the 16 right now? Some Eastern Conference slappy? Okay.
Yeah, Thunder get the Hawks as the 1-16. Cavs versus Kings 2-15. Boston versus Detroit 3-14. Rockets versus
I'm intrigued.
Clippers. The Clippers is the 4-13. Yep.
Wow.
6 and 11 would be Denver versus Milwaukee. 7-10 would be Lakers Golden State. And
that'd be wild. This would be fun.
Yeah,
this is a great idea.
And 5-12 is Knicks and Wolves. I think this would be awesome.
Wow.
I know the NBA wants to maintain Eastern Conference, Western Conference standings. They have divisions, but no one cares about divisions. But a 1 through 16 bracket without any conference sort of alignment would be super fun. Okay, my Wolves vibe check. Wolves vibes are spoiled right now. And I'm talking about us, the media, and fans. So allow Positive Phil a bit of a soapbox here for just a second. All of the criticisms that, like Judd questioning their focus and consistency, like everything that we've seen in those losses against the Pacers and the Pelicans, criticisms valid and spot on. However, the Wolves right now are 41-31. And they're headed for at least 47 wins. But my 50 win math is still alive. I think they have to run the table. No, they get one more loss. They get one more loss. It's pretty bleak. It's on life support. But let's say like if they go 6-4, which they got the Nets on there a couple times, 6-4 would get them to 47 wins for only the 6th time in franchise history. 36 years of Timberwolves basketball, and more than 50% of those 36 seasons, the Wolves have been 20 games below 500 or worse. And there's been, I mean, if you go like real dumpster diving here, man, they've got 2 15-win seasons, they've got a 16, a 17, a couple of they've got basically 1/5 of their franchise existence is 20 wins or less, which is 40 games below 500 or worse. So even with some of these frustrating losses, if they can pull into the playoffs or play-in with a 47-win season, it would be one of the 6 best seasons in the history of Timberwolves basketball. So just positive Phil here with some perspective and a look from the top of the mountain. You got a 23-year-old superstar who won't be fully formed for 3 or 4 more years. There's still a lot of good, even though it's been a step back in the regular season from where they were last year. Go ahead. You can tee off on me.
I don't disagree.
You can tee off on Positive
I don't
Phil.
disagree, Positive
They're in the
Phil,
middle of one of
with
the best
the
seasons
future.
in franchise history.
You know
Judd.
what? Their complete incompetence for years and years. We should have been spoiled like this many of times. There should probably be a championship here. So, like, I'm not going to look at their past flops and failures and say, well, now that at least they're this or that. This should be the expectation. I do agree that the future is bright. I'm not going to crap on that one bit. But I'm also not going to excuse the complete incompetence which surrounded this team for how long. Like, this is where they should be. This is competitive, at least fairly consistently. So, Positive Phil, I have a problem with you attempting to point to the past as like, well, now we should be thankful. How about you don't run your organization like the Titanic for
but
years and years?
People are talking about this season, and again, there are inexplicable losses that deserve to be hammered for in the micro. But then there's kind of the big picture of it all. And I feel like people talk about this team as if like everything that they've done has been a wild disappointment, that the trade was one of the worst trades in the history of the sport. Let me throw this at you as a counter, okay? The Miami Heat, we all agree, like Heat culture, they're having kind of a down year this year, and they traded Jimmy Butler, and they lost like 10 games in a row. But they've got a first ballot Hall of Fame coach. They've got one of the best run organizations in the league. It's a destination for superstars every generation, from Alonzo Mourning all the way through Jimmy Butler and Dwayne Wade and LeBron and Shaq and in between, right? Over the last 10 years, Heat culture, the Miami Heat have won 47 games only twice in the last decade in a single season. So I'm just saying, like, even if it looks kind of weird in some of these losses and it's not what people wanted, they wanted Cat to stay and they wanted this thing to push forward. This has not been the train wreck season that a lot of people are framing it to be. In fact, it's been a really good season by a lot of measurements after they got the first like month and a half they were like 8-10 in the first 18 games after the trade year. So Positive Phil just wants people to have a little perspective on what the Wolves' final regular season record is going to be here.
Sports Dad cannot blame fans, though, for being frustrated with what you're talking about, which is these wonkies up and down and bad losses, and it's inexplicable. Like, there is a way to get to their current status record-wise that looks a lot more like consistent. Doesn't mean that, because you don't have to win every single game. That's not going to happen. And yes, where I agree completely is the Cat trade is done. It's actually, I think, going to be fine. We've talked about that a lot. But the reality is, when you have these spurts, these stops, these starts, and sort of these post-game quotes, again, which drive me crazy, which is, well, we lost our mojo or something like that. No, come on. Yes, you're going to slump, but how you've slumped is weird. So I'm going to defend the fan base on that. But yeah, this team is finally it looks like, in a cycle of being good. So expectations rise. That's good. That's great. That's what fans here deserve.
My vibe check would just be, tighten some of these screws a little bit. Tightened up just a little bit, so you don't have these wonky losses that you had earlier this last week. But I will say I've touched on a lot of the things. If you don't mind, I'll just transition to my favorite Timberwolves thing here. I mean, I'll take the human one here. I'll take the Joe Ingles thing that he did on Friday night that great. Chris Finch did. I mean,
I thought Judd was going to scoff at that in our text
that's mine
thread.
too.
It's your favorite jokingly thing as well?
Oh yeah, I thought it was a great move. Yeah. Great move.
So Joe hasn't started a game since January of 2022. So it's been 3 years. And his family is still living in Orlando, Florida. Joe was there, I believe, last season. His son, Jacob, who is autistic, was able to make it through an NBA game earlier in the week. So they were able to get Joe into the starting lineup with Joe's family here in Minnesota for the night on Friday. And I don't know, you see some of the quotes too, just of we kind of like the joke, right? Chris Finch is just like Judd. Like he acts like Judd. Definitely likes the same type of beverages as Judd. Just a good guy. He's got the gray hair, now the touch of gray for Judd and Chris Finch. But Finch said after the game, quote, "Sometimes you just got to do the human thing." And we always talk about all these minutes matter and those minutes mattered for another reason. But someone put it in my head as an idea to make sure Joe can see the floor. And I figured we were going to do it. Let's do it in style. Guys were behind it. I think it gave us the right boost we needed and a change of energy. It's not often that you get to do those type of things, but we're really happy that we could. And Joe was also very ecstatic about the decision too. So from a turbulent at point seasons this year, you know, they've had some troubles, especially going into this game too. Of they have to win this game, and they were still able to do, I think, number one, kick ass on the floor, which is awesome, and get the win. But they were also able to do something that, also to Chris Finch's point, matters.
I will say the upset of the show and the weekend so far is I fully expected Judd, Grinch sports dad Judd, to be like, does he need to start? What could you throw him in there for 3 minutes, maybe the start of the second quarter? But the fact that you are aligned with your spirit animal, Chris Finch here, is great. Okay.
I loved it. Well, to be clear, I think it did two things. One, it was just a great move. Like it's a special situation. It's a great move. But the other thing, don't sleep on this too. For a team that sort of like its focus comes and goes and stuff, think about the galvanizing move for that entire room. And like Conley saying, "Oh yeah, Joe can start. We're buddies. I know his family." I thought the entire thing from not just, as Declan said, a human perspective, but a basketball one was brilliant. He didn't play that long, but starting was special. And you read the post-game quotes in that case, and it was awesome. So no, I think that this on several, you know, starting with the fact that it was just a nice thing, but if you're Chris Finch, I think this also helped you immensely with the players. It was just perfect timing. Love it.
It's been a great signing for a lot of reasons. I think behind the scenes, you know, when Ingles initially signed, I think there was maybe some hope that, okay, can he be a guy that can kind of maybe stretch the offense a little bit, knock down some threes, even, and there's been some games where they've leaned on him as a ball handler. But at the end of the season here, I think there's going to be another Flagrant Howls ranking exercise in play for just like the best end of the bench veteran leader guy in Wolves franchise history. The way that he kind of big brothers Anthony Edwards, the way that if you watch, Ingles is oftentimes during timeouts the first guy that'll walk out and have conversations with officials too, to just sort of point out things that he's observing. He's just the ultimate connector guy.
Yep.
He's a fun personality. He also, on this team in particular, he has experience with Rudy Gobert, so he can help. Gobert is a tough guy to learn the ropes with. But if we were making like a Mount Rushmore of great end of the bench towel waving presences, I mean, Mark Madsen's the example from 20 years ago. Come in, set screens for 5 minutes, and then go put your snap-up pants back on. Yeah, help us tank a game by shooting 7 threes.
Just shoot all the threes. Shoot them all, Mark.
But it's been a fun presence. And I also love, too, that they'll bring Joe Ingles in if they just need a reliable inbounds pass. Like, hey, you haven't done anything for 2.5 hours, but we just need a guy who's kind of tall that is responsible with the basketball with 5 seconds left in this one.
My favorite is always he's like basically the trainer. Every time there's an injury, he's running out there to see what's going on. It's like when I'm at Target Center, it's always been the funniest thing I'd watch for.
Yeah, I think, by the way, clean sweep across the board. That was, they've had a couple days off here. They've had these nondescript games against the Pelicans. So I think throwing a little bit of family joy in there is a good thing. Okay, before we get to the last couple categories here, State of the Wolves Monday, our friends at Kieran's across the street are slinging some beverages before Wolves games and Twins games coming up too.
That's right. Yeah, they have some big screens. They have game day specials. They have award-winning proper pours. Go check out Kieran's, just steps away from Target Center. And yes, us three will be at Kieran's for the Twins home opener next Thursday when they play the Astros. So we will be at Kieran's hanging out, I believe, from 1 to 2 o'clock. So if you're in the area and you're going to go to Twins opening day, or you're just waiting for the next Wolves game for days and days and days, go make it happen at Kieran's. Just steps away from Target Center and Target Field.
Put a cot up.
It is crazy. Like, they're going. You get 2 days off, and then tonight, and then they don't play again until Friday. So you're going to wind up having basically one game over a week-long stretch. Well, the Lakers had those games displaced because of the fires earlier this year, and then they had like 6 games in 8 days. It's kind of crazy. And then a reminder about the MyBookie offer here too, Judd.
Absolutely. Yep. In fact, the tournament starts. It's great, the first and second round, but inevitably what happens? Bracket gets busted. Now it's done. And you're saying, okay, for the Sweet 16, what should I do? Just a reminder here that single game matchups can be where the real cash is made. Bet every game, scope out player props, and find your edge. MyBookie's Bet and Get is back to sweeten the deal as well. Place a cash bet on March Madness and get a surprise reward as well. Free bets, cash back, bonus chips. You never know what's coming next. Sign up now with the promo code Flagrant Howls. Claim your deposit bonus to make the most of March Madness. Go to mybookie.website/Flagrant Howls. That's mybookie.website/Flagrant Howls, and get involved even if your bracket is busted as the Sweet 16 comes up this coming weekend. That's with our friends from MyBookie.
Okay, I'm going to give you my least favorite Wolves thing here. And we just praised Chris Finch for being a great humanitarian head coach.
I think I'm going to steal mine.
Same one here?
I think I know what yours is.
This is, I think, the 4th or 5th time Chris Finch has either right after a game or maybe like he's done this at shoot around or something in the next game where hey, this thing that happened in the game the other night, like if I could go back, I would have done this instead as the coach. Yep. And they lose that game against the Pelicans on Wednesday night, and Chris Finch. So this is pregame on Friday. Yeah. So he said this about the Wednesday game.
Yep.
That they lost to the Pelicans.
Yep.
He said, the first regret I had the other night is I should have played Jaylen Clark 20 minutes instead of 12. And then he went on to say that he needs to force himself to find 20 minutes for Jaylen Clark. Of course, later that night, he winds up with, I think it was like 11 or 12 minutes, and then garbage time hit, and he played a couple more. So he didn't even he got to 14 minutes on Friday night, but they had put the Josh Minetts and the Rob Dillinghams in. So here's the crazy thing. The evidence slapped you upside the head 2 months ago. It was the Utah game, right? Where he was like a plus, hey, we need you to play, it's an emergency, and he was like a plus 30 or something ridiculous. And you saw it with the eye test, the analytics. The Timberwolves roster, if you rank every player based on win shares, so I'm going to get win shares per 48 minutes. I'll give you the analytical spin on this. Here are the most impactful players on the team. Number 1, Rudy Gobert, who, again, has all this hidden value defensively, just the shot alterations. Jaylen Clark, number 2. It's just one measurement, but he is, in terms of win shares per 48 minutes, the second most valuable player on the roster in the minutes that he's played so far this year. And on offense, he's a guy that can move the ball. He can get out in transition. He'll make some mistakes here and there. But he's shooting like 45% from three-point range on a couple attempts per game. So you can trust him to stretch go stand in the corner there or move the ball when it gets to you. And it's just kind of frustrating. It's great that Finch is transparent and will admit, you know what, in retrospect, I'm not super stubborn about this. I made a mistake. You would like the mistake to be recognized in the moment when you need the adjustment to be made. So Jaylen Clark has proven himself that he should be getting, here's the minutes in the last 5 games: 5, 17, 9, 12, and 14. And Finch wants to play him 20. Can we get it to 18? How about 8? Let's get him. He hasn't played 18 minutes in several games at this point. So I'm good with Finch's transparency. I would like the mental processing to happen in the moment when the game can still be won.
You stole my homework. You snuck into my house and stole. In fact, you know what happened? Maya came to my house, snuck in and stole my notepad. And no, it's exactly what I had. And then I saw on Twitter a tweet about, well, he's being transparent. That's good, right? And it's like, well, yes, it's good he's being transparent. But how many months has this been? So I'm totally with you. It's like, yes, I like the fact that he is transparent. And if this was the first time, and Clark was, just started playing, I'd be like, okay, yeah, good thing to realize. But it's not. And so, yes, you nailed it.
And the math is a little hard because they've got a good deep roster, and those minutes have to come at the expense of somebody, and it can't always just be Mike Conley, because you do need an organizer and a general. And Mike Conley has been a lot better since January,
right?
So whose minutes is he eating up? And that might be it might be some DiVincenzo minutes, it might be some Nickeil Alexander-Walker minutes, it might be some Jaden McDaniels minutes, depending on the matchup. But he has earned more than the 9 minutes a game he's been averaging over the last 6 games or whatever it is.
It's now proven in a not so small sample size that he is helping you win games.
Totally.
Because if we were asking for, play Dillingham more now, damn it, then it's like, yeah, but to what end possibly? Jaylen Clark looks like he's been playing for 5 to 10 years.
Very mature.
Every time out there. Very mature. He helps you win. Yes, I'm with you on this.
Yeah. So, all right, Dex, what's your least favorite Wolves thing?
Yeah, I think we still touched on it last week a little bit on some other episodes. And he had a decent game off the bench on Friday, but I don't love the Nas Reed no starter minutes. I want to figure out how to get Nas Reed as a starter, or at least get him to the point where we exactly know what to expect from him. Because it was a solid game on Friday. He had a good day shooting, but since being moved out of the starting lineup back to a bench role in the last 7 games, he's been okay. He's averaging about 12 points. He's shooting 42% from the floor, but shooting was much more consistent as a starter. I understand that the puzzle pieces, we just talked Jaylen Clark, it's difficult to fit all of them in to the ways that we would like to see them as Timberwolves fans, but I like Nas Reed in the starting lineup, and I want him to get more run there than what he was gotten the first time.
Yeah, it's at this point, it's probably not happening unless there's an injury, because Julius Randle is not moving to a bench role at this point in March, and Rudy Gobert is also not moving to a bench role. So you're going to have to make a 28 to 30-ish $1 million a year decision off of what you've seen in 6 years, but also this year. And we talked about it last week on a couple different episodes. At his best, Nas Reed is absolutely a 35-minute per game starter caliber player, electric offensive player, and maybe even a secondary scoring guy next to Anthony Edwards. But then he gives you these weird stretches where he just kind of disappears offensively, or sometimes body language can be a thing. You want him on the team, but you're going to have to make a really, really expensive decision on him. And I think it's a no-brainer. I think you sign him, and then you have to figure out, okay, if you're going to pay him $30 million, he's probably your starting 4 at that point. But then what happens with Gobert or Julius Randle? There's a lot of puzzle pieces in play going into the summer.
Gobert's back for sure, right?
I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
Next year? Yeah, I wouldn't.
Yep. Yes, with his contract.
I think it's more likely than not. But I think Tim Connolly probably has irons and fires that we have no idea. Not reporting anything. I'm just saying. I think Gobert's drop-offs in some key areas make you pause a little bit about fulfilling the entire 3-year contract. It's also it's a lesser contract, but it's also it's a little harder to trade because other teams are you going to buy his age 32, 33, 34 seasons? But at least he's not on this crazy super max where, holy crap, he's making 40, 45, $50 million a year and also falling off the age cliff. But the way that they played without him, when it was a lot of Nas and Julius lineups and Jaden McDaniels playing bigger in some of those lineups, it does make you creatively re-envision, like, okay, how could we make the finances work, stay out of the second apron, and maybe have more regular offensive explosive lineups on the court. So I'm not ready to say he's 100% on next year's team personally.
So are you talking about a world where potentially at least Gobert is gone, Julius opts in and sticks around, and Nas is signed?
I think there's a universe where your starting lineup includes Julius, Nas, and Jaden next year.
Okay.
And Rudy's off the team. And then you have like a rim protector. So you go some other avenue for a rim protector that's not nearly the presence of Gobert, but helps you. I also think, the path that we've been walking down is Randall is gone in some form, either via trade or an opt-out or whatever.
Correct.
And then Nas just slides into the Julius Randle role,
right,
in the starting lineup. But then, okay, how are you filling? That's a huge productive body that you have to fill now coming off the bench. And how do you do that? And who is that? I don't think it's your draft pick because Chris Finch has not necessarily shown. Yeah.
I forgot to play him again. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Or do you just have a smaller team? I don't think you can go into next year with Gobert, Nas Reed, and Luka Garza as your only like traditional big player. And by the way, Nas isn't even like a traditional. He's not like a great rebounding traditional big guy either. He's more of a perimeter player that plays beyond the 3-point line.
The thing that gives me pause on Gobert is I don't know if I've ever consistently watched a player who the eye test tells me one thing, but the metrics tell me a different thing.
With Gobert, you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. He impacts games way more than my eyes tell me he does.
Yeah, because it's the things that he does poorly are on full display. The dropping of passes, the clunky offensive stuff, even some of his body language, his Gobertness. But then the stuff that he's really good at, sometimes it shows up. Oh, it's a block shot or it's a rebound, right. But it's the things that don't happen because of him.
Correct.
That he is so great at. And look at the other night, for instance. So wasn't he was like a plus 34 in that game against the Pelicans, and it's a bad Pelicans team, and Zion wasn't playing. He goes for 15 and 11 and had a few steals and only played 30 minutes, and they were plus 34. But I remember distinctly watching portions of that game where that's the never mind stat, where a Pelicans player would dribble in, and oh my God, there's a 7'4" monster with an 8-foot wingspan or whatever, 100-foot wingspan. And okay, let's divert the play over this way. It's the nevermind. And he is still, NBA.com has a great statistical dashboard that shows you like shot percentage at the rim, but it also shows you other underlying things. And he is still very, very highly rated in a lot of those categories. They're not glamorous. They're not sexy. And sometimes he is a liability when you're looking for some offensive juice. But then again, like, sometimes because if you can get in the ball under the hoop, he's actually a really efficient offensive player because he'll go 7 for 8 and all of them are like close range alley-oops. He scored 15 points on 5 shots against the Pelicans on Friday. Not because he's this crazy elite offensive player, but because he's huge. And if you can feed him the ball under the basket and he seals somebody off, he can actually be a huge asset offensively too. So I don't know. It's kind of a complicated little roster, because I don't think there's a world where you pay Nas Reed $30 million a year or even $25 million a year only to come off the bench for 25 minutes. So you have to go in, if you do a contract like that, with him as a starter and a 36-minute player in mind. Do they believe he's a 36-minute player over 82 games? I think we think they do, but he's never been asked to do that for more than like a month or month and a half at a time.
It's a conundrum is what it is.
Yeah. I think it's a good problem to have because like you just have a bunch of really good players on your team. But
Sure.
So, all right, there's your State of the Wolves Monday here on Flagrant Howls. The sports dad, our mustached executive producer, Declan.
It's looking good, by the way.
Thank you.
Very nice.
In solidarity with my guy, Mickey Gasper, who made the Twins opening day roster. Just a couple guys with mustaches just slinging
Leg
takes
almost
and
got cut
cutting
off.
it up.
Yeah, he's still bleeding. I think he's
Speaking of cutting it up, poor
probably
Mickey
still has
Gasper.
gauze all up and down his leg. This is a Timberwolves lifestyle podcast. See you guys.